was really excited to learn that Patrick McRae was going to be giving his lecture today because I'm also very fascinated. I'm really excited to read your book when it comes out with what was happening in the 1960s with EAT. And it gives me an excuse to show this photograph, which is one of my favorites. It's Robert Rauschenberg and Billy Kluver working on a 4-piece kinetic sculpture, and this is taken in 1966. What I love this image just for its the visual aspects of it, but I like it's a great black and white photograph. You have the this kind of junkyard of a studio space, but what I love most is when you see the two of these, you see both Billy Kluver and Robert Rauschenberg working on this collaboratively, right? So the engineer and the artist. But you look at them and they're both wearing a white shirt, black slacks, and a tie, right? So if you didn't know who was Billy Kluver and who was Robert Rauschenberg, you really couldn't tell who was the engineer and who the scientist or the artist is. So I love this, and it also then, which do you remember Patrick's talk? Do you remember? So this over here is Billy Kluver, and that's Robert Rauschenberg. But they're actively engaged exactly the same. So, and then I also wanted to note. So I'm coming to the art science world many different directions, but at the moment I'm pursuing the direction of being a curator. So I'm interested in fostering the interaction and the work of art, science, and technology, and doing it in the exhibition space. So I am very much inspired by what happened in this collaboration. So Billy Kluver and Robert Rauschenberg actually were the curators behind this 9 evenings of theater engineering, where you had, as was mentioned before, 30 engineers from Bell Labs and 10 artists. I mean, Yvonne Rainer, John Cage, amazing people coming together to do this 9 evenings of exploring technology in theater, or computers and dance. And it just sounded crazy. It wasn't so successful in the moment, but historically, it's super important to think about. So on that, I'm thinking a lot about what can an exhibition space be, and what can how the exhibition space can best be used for art, science, and technology. So I just want to share this quote with you that is from a paper over the last year, and I really like this. Exhibitions are for showing to others. 2 students taking the entrance exam for an art school, putting their works up outside the school gate, and sharing their drawings with each other. This is an exhibition. Bringing a scroll or a fan into the sunlight in our house and putting it away neatly into a box afterwards. This is also an exhibition. So this is actually a pretty radical idea of what an exhibition space can be, or what we can think of as the form. And what this article was actually really pushing against was the idea of sort of this top-down form of exhibition making, sort of something that we're a little more familiar with, and very specifically deriving out of so the Great Exhibition, the first of these kind of giant expeditionary complexes that happened in 1851. This was at the Crystal Palace in London, and this was a massive scale exhibition. It's what's interesting to me is that it was very, very much about kind of England wanting to show off its power and wealth, and how it's connected internationally. There was definitely discrepancy between the work that was UK-based work of art versus craft from another country that was from one of their colonies. So there's a definite hierarchy there. But I think it's interesting to note that this not only had art and craft, but also technology and machines and new science. So it was all kind of in this one space, in bubbling up together. It's also, curiously, a moment where we start to see the differentiation of disciplines. So it's sort of that going from this moment towards, when you get to that 1959 speech by C.P. Snow, where it really has moved to that drastic other end. But I found, if you dig a little bit farther, in the 1830s, there were this phenomenon of these science gallery spaces. So this is an image of the National Gallery of Practical Science, which was founded in 1830. I'm getting out of the history soon, guys, so we're pretty far back here. But what's fascinating is that this is early examples of, so you have new technology, new machines. You also had, so it was science that was being demonstrated in an exhibition space. So intentionally putting it out there for scientists to communicate what they're doing for the public to participate in that conversation, which I think is really very interesting, that was kind of at the early stages of science really coming to its rise of influence. We have it in the exhibition space. This, by the way, this particular gallery, there's something I read about it that I guess it was the first time an electric eel was brought into England, and people would line up at 3 o'clock every day because the electric eel would be fed, and they wanted to watch this electric eel being fed in the exhibition space. I feel like that's something that would so fit in the contemporary art world. It's incredible. So let's bring it up to now. How might we rethink the exhibition space to best foster art, science, and technology of today? And this is the question that I am exploring and I'm really researching in my MFA thesis, but I'm not the only one who's thinking about this. And what strikes me as interesting is even in the last year alone, I've seen so many examples of exhibitions that are really not only showing art, science, and technology, but trying to think about it in a different way. Think about how you can involve experimentation, how you can, well, let me show you some examples. So one, and many of these I actually had the opportunity to see this past year, so vocal vibrations at the laboratory. I saw it in Cambridge and Boston. This is David Edwards' art science space in Boston. They're exploring how people, how your health and wellness is affected by the sort of sounds, the human voice, vibrations. Dario Robledo at the Menil collection in November, they had, this is The Boundary of Life Quietly Crossed. They staged this experiment within the space where they were not only looking at how do visitors, so I think they were able to look at 400 visitors to that space. How do people experience art when they're viewing it? And then also having the artists involved in creating a work of art in the exhibition space and having so it's sort of measuring their neuroscience response to the art making process. So exploring creativity, exploring the experience with art within the exhibition space. I went out and saw this exhibition at the Beale Center in February, Wetware Art Agency and Animation. And one of the pieces I really liked was Adam Brown's The Great Work of a Metal Lover. Of course, I'm an inorganic chemist, so of course this is the one that I chose. But it's a piece that there is bacteria that transforms gold chloride into gold over the course of the exhibition. So it's an experiment playing out within the exhibition space itself. Probably my favorite was I got to see this at Dutch Design Week in the fall. Studio Knoll did this well, so it's called The Human Swarm, and you come to the space and you have 3 choices of a door, and you go through the door, and I chose the leftmost door, which was apparently not the most popular, so I felt pretty good about that. But this is a schematic of the space. Basically, you go through, you choose a door, and then it's a maze, and you have to go through this labyrinth, and you can go and experience the whole exhibition, no matter which door you go through. But you start to discover that you see you're learning through moving through the space about the migration of a swarm of bees or the flock of birds or ants communicating about food. And but as you're continuing through the space, you start to notice things. So if you look in that, there's a number 5 in the corner there. Right around there, or no, maybe it's a little past there, but anyway, there's a guard station. There's like a booth with somebody looking out over the space. So you realize you're being watched. And you go in, there's one place you go in and you notice that the more people who come into the room, the more dots. It's sort of this amazing exhibition of new technology and things that you're experiencing. But ultimately, this exhibition was actually about people and how people migrate through space. And so you discover at the end that it was really the whole exhibition was an experiment to try and understand how people move, how people make choices, what ways it can go. And I think there's something really, this is a shift in what the exhibition can be, not only showing experimental work, but also being an experiment itself. And I, as a scientist and an art historian and curator, I'm really fascinated by that. So let me get to the end. I have an exhibition, my thesis exhibition. I'm asking all these kinds of questions. It's called Culture as Medium, and I've intentionally looked at. I'm interested in the boundary of biology and art for this exhibition, and found individuals who are working with bacteria as their medium. So Tal Danino, Anna Demetrio, and François-Joseph Lepoint are all the artists that are in my exhibition. And I have some pieces that are growing experiments or performance experiments. But I've also devised an additional experiment, if you will. So the exhibition is actually housed in two different locations in Baltimore. So they're both community centers. This first one, Motor House, the exhibition's on view next Friday, and I have an opening which you all should come to. You're welcome to, from 7 to 10. It's a walking distance of the train station, so you can hop on the MARC and come on up. This is a new center, or it's a new renovated space to be kind of an arts hub within the Station North Arts and Entertainment District, which is a important area in Baltimore for the artist community. And then the other part of the exhibition, if I can get is at Baltimore Underground Science Space, which is a citizen science lab in Baltimore. And that will be opening on view 1 week later, April 8th. And there'll be a reception later in April 21st. But so I'm setting up here is my own little experiment to see how framing affects how we experience the art in these spaces. Is it possible? I almost wonder if people will experience the art more as science in the art space and art in the science space, just because it's something different. But I don't know until it happens. I've recruited a number of undergraduates to help me out with testing out what's happening in this space. So they're going to be like we're doing later in the reception here. We're going to be instigating particular lines of conversation. So things like, is this art or is this science? But also ask ethical questions about what do we think about making art out of living systems? What does that mean? And that's something that the exhibition space is also sort of a wonderful, not only a cultural meeting place and a place to experience this kind of work, but a place that you can have these kinds of conversations that you might not have otherwise. So really, it's a way to kind of bring us full circle back to that sort of engaging the public with science, but also art. So art, science, and the public in a threefold dialogue within this kind of a space. So that's all I have. You can check out, there's an exhibition website, cultureasmedium.com. Thank you very much.